Hi guys, welcome back to the Home and Homestead. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new, I'm Rebecca. Today I'm going to be doing some baking. In particular, I'm going to be baking with some fresh milled flour. I'll be using soft white wheat berries in order to make a nice light and fluffy flour that works wonderfully for baking cakes and cookies and things like that. So together we're going to make some chocolate chip walnut cookies. So let's head to the kitchen so we can make some delicious chocolate chip walnut cookies using some fresh milled flour. Alright, so I'm going to be using my Bosch Universal Plus mixer today because I'm going to be doing a really large batch of cookies. The amounts that I'll give you today is for a single batch of cookies. That usually makes about a dozen nice sized cookies or about 2 dozen smaller ones. And then I previously used my NutriMill grain mill to create my flour using the soft white wheat berries. So in the mixing bowl, I have a half cup of brown sugar and a half cup of white sugar. Now again, that's for the single batch. I'm doing a multiple batch, but I'll just give you the single batch amounts. To that, I'm going to add a half cup of butter or 1 stick of butter. And we're going to cream the butter and sugar together. So in my mixing bowl, I have the cookie paddles attached already with the metal drive. And the butter has softened to room temperature, so it should cream nicely with the sugar. What I like to do is just do a test run, do a couple rotations with the cookie beaters just so that I know that the butter is softened enough. There, that looks good. So now let me cream the butter with the sugar. I'll turn this to number 1 and turn up to number 2 just until the butter is incorporated nicely with the sugar. There we go. Now you're going to add 1 egg. So again, if you're doing multiple batches, you would multiply that by the number of batches that you want to make for that day. Then we'll add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Add the cover back on. And I'll turn this to number 1, just to incorporate the eggs and vanilla into our creamed butter and sugar mixture. Now let's add some of that fresh milled flour. So I have it here. There's a nice, soft, fluffy texture to it. I'm going to take the lid off here and we'll add our flour. So you'll add 1.5 cups of flour per batch that you're making. Now we'll add a half teaspoon of baking powder and a half teaspoon of baking soda and a half teaspoon of salt. Let's get the cover back on and we'll mix the flour with our butter and sugar and eggs and vanilla mixture to create our cookie dough. Now I'll add 3/4 of a cup of chocolate chips. And then finally we'll add a 1/4 cup of walnuts that have been coarsely chopped. I just used my Ninja Food Prep mini food processor to coarsely chop up some walnuts. We can add that in to our cookie dough. Put the lid back on. And we'll incorporate those chocolate chips and nuts into our cookie dough. right, there we have our chocolate chip walnut cookie dough. I'm just going to lift off these cookie paddles. Now let's get our cookie dough all scooped out and put onto some cookie sheets. All right, so here is our chocolate chip walnut cookie dough. And I have a medium-sized scoop. I'm going to scoop this cookie dough onto some parchment paper lined baking sheets. You make your cookies as big as you'd like. I have the oven preheating to 350 degrees. So what I like to do is scoop the cookies onto the cookie sheet and just flatten them just a little bit. I'll probably do a couple sheets of these nice size cookies, and I'll probably do some a little bit smaller as well. Now these are a little bit larger cookies, so when they expand, they're probably going to touch one another, and that's perfectly fine to me. The next batch that I do will be a little bit smaller. So let's get these into the oven to bake. We're going to bake these at 350 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes, or until the outsides have a slightly golden brown color to them. So let's get these into the oven to bake. All right, our first batch of chocolate chip walnut cookies have finished baking. I allowed these to bake for about 14 minutes. So now what I'm going to do is place these off to the side to continue to cool, and we'll get the next batch of cookies going. All right, now we can get these a little bit smaller cookies into the oven as well. We'll bake them for 10 to 12 minutes. And here our little bit smaller cookies have finished baking. And again, I let these bake for about 14 minutes. They have a nice golden brown color to the outside, and they're touching just slightly, but that's perfectly fine for me. Now what I'm going to do is allow all these cookies to cool. I'll leave them on the parchment paper and the baking sheet for a few minutes, and I'll slide them and put them right onto the cooling rack. Once these cookies have completely cooled, we'll come back and have a closer look and a taste of our homemade chocolate chip walnut cookies baked with fresh milled flour. All right, here we have our chocolate chip walnut cookies made with fresh milled flour. So I use some soft white wheat berries to make the flour. That has a really lovely soft and fluffy type of flour consistency that works wonderfully for baking cakes and cookies. So these cookies have that great combination of a crispy edge with a nice chewy center. So off to the left, I have some of the larger size cookies I made for the first batch that I baked, and to the right, I have a little bit smaller cookies that I baked on the second batch in the oven. So what I can do is show you how nice and chewy these cookies are. With nice gooey chocolate chips in there. So if you're interested in making your own fresh milled flour at home, you can get a couple of different varieties of wheat berries to start off with. You can do a nice hard wheat berry for breads and rolls and things like that, and even crackers. And you can do a soft wheat berry for doing cakes and cookies and those type of little goodies. There's also some wonderful ancient grains you can play around with, and they work really nicely for making pastas and pizza doughs and things like that too. So just something to think about, and hopefully if you're looking for some more fresh milled flour recipes, you'll give this chocolate chip walnut cookie recipe a try. They're quite delicious. They have a nice chewy texture to them, and we really enjoy these, especially since when made with fresh milled flour, we control the ingredients, so they make a nice sweet treat for everyone to enjoy. If you'd like more ideas or inspiration on other baked goods and sweet treats, be sure to check out my other playlists on the topics. And keep watching, because I'll share with you some other recipes that I make using fresh milled flour as well. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so yet, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe. So please be sure to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't yet. And continue to watch my channel, The Home and Homestead, for some more homemade, homegrown, and home-style inspiration. But I hope that you're having a fantastic day. See you next time. Take care.